this September 13th, 2022 meeting of the Manhattan City Commission. It is a work session. And tonight the only item really on the agenda is to talk about the advisory boards. And so there's a memo out from city staff that kind of set the stage. And so as we'll go ahead with the flag salute, Pledge of Allegiance first. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. And Jared, the roll call, please.
Mayor Morse,
Present?
Commissioner Hattasol,
Present.
Commissioner Reddy,
Present.
Commissioner Butler,
Present.
Commissioner Mata.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Jared. Okay, and so the first thing we need to do, there's this little protocol here about a work session, and we will need to decide if we're going to allow public comment. So,
Mayor, I move we accept public comment for the work session.
is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Jared Wassinger, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Hattasol,
Yes.
Commissioner Reddy,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Hit the button. Yes.
Commissioner Mata,
Yes.
Mayor Morse.
Yes, thank you.
Motion passes.
Okay, motion passed. So with this work session, I've kind of already introduced it, but Jared Wassinger from the city staff, city administration, will be carrying the ball here. So there you go, Jared.
All right, well, thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. Tonight, we are going to do a review of our advisory boards and committees. It won't be a truly holistic view. We have a lot of boards, a lot of committees, a lot of bylaws, but we're going to give you a little background on some of the research and reviews that city staff has conducted, some initial recommendations that we'd like you all to consider and discuss tonight related to a few of those boards, get feedback and direction from you all so we can continue the discussion. We understand that we're not going to, necessarily be able to talk about everything tonight. We're not going to be, taking a vote or taking any formal action tonight, but your feedback and direction will help city staff continue this process so we can continue the conversation with you all. I do want to provide, I wanted to start out with just our organizational chart and give folks an understanding of where our boards and committees fall within that organizational chart. Obviously, our residents vote for you all, our 5 elected city commissioners of our governing body. That governing body then appoints a city manager who then oversees all of the city staff, but our city commission also appoints the members of our advisory boards and committees and has the authority to create those advisory boards and committees. So those boards and committees are working for the city commission in an advisory capacity, providing recommendations related to policies, procedures, certain programs depending on their charge. So that is kind of the relationship between those boards and our governing body. We have 21 advisory boards and committees. For this discussion, we're not including anything that's outside of those appointed purviews like the law board or the library board or some of those others where actually some of our city commissioners even serve on some of those boards. Really tonight, we're focusing on the boards and committees that you all have created through resolutions and have appointed members to and given them direction over time to provide you certain feedback. Over 160 members that make up all of those boards and committees. We do have a lot of motivated individuals within our community who are, willing to help, participate, engage in the local government process. They're volunteers. They're taking their time to provide you that feedback that you're asking of them. Right now we have about 26 open positions or expiring positions. So over time, as terms are expiring or people are no longer willing or able to serve on boards, those open up and we have certain processes there. I know we've had conversations with the city commission over time about that process and the application process, making sure that's efficient, how we can publicly educate those in the community about open positions to fill those vacancies. Those are some things that we're looking at internally too, and that we can discuss over time as well. We have dedicated employees to serve as staff liaisons to these groups. So they're kind of the go-between between that advisory board, the recommendations, the motions, the action, the business that they're doing. We can provide that information to the city manager and to you all, and then assist them with following certain procedures related to COMA and CORA and just running their business. Along with the staff liaison, I do want to point out that we have a lot of other staff members within a lot of our operational or administrative departments who are assisting these staff liaisons in these boards and committees so that they can do their business. HR, the manager's office, the clerk's office, our city attorney's office are also providing support, whether it's through research, contracts, actions that are coming about so that we can take the action and the recommendations that they provide and adequately provide it to you all for your consideration. So there's a lot of hands involved in all the work that's occurring. As a part of the strategic plan, I think it's just important to note that part of our goal number 2 of a connected government, we wanted to revisit some of these processes with not only our city commission. We've done some work on the city commission's processes, and we've changed some charter ordinance, looked at our policy resolution for how this governing body works. But the next step was to come back and look at some of our advisory boards and committees, not only their charges and what they're doing, but also a lot of the other things that we may not get into the details tonight of, but things like their bylaws, the more administrative functions of the application process, and looking at those things. And in our city commission retreat, it was something that this group identified that some review and evaluation needed to occur, and we need to kind of figure out a way of how can we revisit regularly our boards and committees and make sure that they have the information that they need from you all and the charges and direction that they need to do their duties adequately. This is just a list of those boards and committees. We have I kind of lumped them into 3 categories. We have just some general advisory boards in nature where they're really just providing some type of recommendation to the city commission. Others are maybe more financial in nature where they're providing a budget recommendation for the city commission to act upon. And then we have kind of what we call those quasi-judicial boards where a lot of their items are generated for them because of other ordinances and policies and programs that we have, possibly related to codes and zoning and things of that nature. So we did do a kind of a holistic review just of these boards. We talked with staff liaisons. We looked into their bylaws and just kind of did a cursory review of a lot of these boards and committees up front. Some are very active. They have regular work. A lot of their work is generated for them, so they're meeting sometimes twice a month, and a lot of those recommendations are coming before you. Good examples are like the Board of Zoning Appeals and the Planning Board, where their staff is generating work for them, and they keep quite busy. Others, like we've talked about, have a little bit more general purposes. Sometimes there's an issue that is ripe for discussion and they're providing a recommendation to the city commission. Other times there's a struggle to maybe populate an agenda or provide items that are worth bigger analysis and recommendation to the city commission. There are a few boards and committees that they were created a while ago. They had an original charge, an original purpose, and that's been satisfied. And then again, it's a little bit harder for that group to figure out maybe what the next charge is. And then we have had instances where boards, because it's kind of maybe unclear of what is desired of the city commission, but they do have charges within their bylaws and general goals that they kind of pursue their own directives or want a broader role. or want more assistance sometimes, or funding to do certain things, which is, of course, natural because those individuals were appointed to boards and they want to, provide something back to the community and to the public and to the city commission. So as I said, we did that review. We provided that staff memo to you back in August. We provided some initial recommendations related to certain boards that we would just recommend we keep and maintain at this time, possible boards that could be consolidated to maybe provide some efficiencies, other boards that we may feel their original purposes have been satisfied and could be dissolved or repurposed, but not in a way that they're an appointed board by the city commission. And then others where we really wanted to bring them up and provide some options so that you all could provide some further review and direction. All that said, following this work session and anything that comes of it, we do recommend that all of our boards and committees have their bylaws reviews. Some of them, you notice, don't have bylaws. And how can we look at the application process, the membership requirements, maybe how frequently they're meeting. Maybe they don't need to meet as frequently, or maybe they need to meet more frequently. Or maybe you guys give them a charge and they meet for that year, and if it takes them 2 meetings, it takes them 2. If it takes them 5, it takes them 5. But doing a little bit more holistic evaluation in that way too is going to help this process move along. These are the boards that right now, again, we're not recommending any changes at this time. A lot of them have more consistent functions. Some of them have state laws related to their operation. Others have local ordinances that require their operation and the business that they do. So I'd be happy to talk through any of these if you have questions at the end of the presentation. And if you have specific feedback about a future work session or discussion where you'd like to talk about some of these boards, we certainly can. But I'm going to jump into the ones that were kind of the main premise and had a lot of detail in the staff memo that was provided. And I'll go through those, and then I kind of have a summary slide of those boards, so then we can kind of take public comment and get some feedback and questions from the City Commission. First one I wanted to mention was Social Service Advisory Board and Special Alcohol. The numbers next to those is just an indicator for you and the public of how many members are within those boards. Those were created quite a while ago, 1988 for social services and 1994 for special alcohol. Those boards are creating an application process for the public for various ways to provide funding to those social service agencies. Special alcohol has a little bit more stipulations to it because that's a transfer of state liquor taxes that are collected through the state, provided to the city, and then we're using that funding specifically. Social services coming from the general fund on an annual basis. Neither required by any law necessarily, but they are created to involve the community and help the City Commission make decisions related to those fundings. There's a lot of similar processes with this one. There's some overlap in the application and the review. There's site visits that are involved with some of these agencies. We have agencies that are applying to both of these boards. Historically, there's been limited review and evaluation from the City Commission during the budget process. That's not always the case, but there's a lot of work that's done by both of these boards. They do a lot of application and review. They work with the staff liaison to provide a recommended budget, and then we all went through the process recently at the last first budget hearing. They make that recommendation to the City Commission, and then the City Commission ultimately has the say. So we kind of have, two possible recommendations and open to any feedback from the City Commission on this one. But one option is you could dissolve the Special Alcohol Fund Advisory Board and then incorporate their charge into the SSAB. Then that board would make the recommendation for both funds. And that is to create an efficiency to avoid some of the overlap, the application process, the multiple agencies applying to both boards, just to kind of save time for those agencies, for city staff, and for those board members. There is an option that you could dissolve both boards, and you could administer the application process internally through city staff. We could get feedback from you up front before that process occurred. Ultimately, again, though, it would be city staff during the budget process, much like they do now, but it goes through the boards as we present that recommendation or review of the agencies that are requesting funds, and then the city commission again would ultimately provide that review or that recommendation on funding. The Partner City Advisory Committee, it was created in 2004 originally as a sister city advisory committee, renamed Partner City, and established our partnership with our sister city in the Czech Republic. I believe it led to a partially funded trip back in the day to engage in that relationship with our partner city at the time. That group was heavily involved in the establishment of our city flag plaza and city park. But other than that, over the years, there really haven't been any formal recommendations to the city commission. This is one of those groups that I kind of highlighted at the beginning that at the time, they had a charge, they did some things, but since then, it's really just been, the group meeting and discussing, the heritage there and pursuing some things. This group has, recently, tried to do some other things. They're actually going to be presenting, or they'll have a little section at the third Thursday downtown where they're going to be promoting the partner city. But ultimately, in this case, the recommendation was to dissolve the committee. This group could continue to meet as a non-governmental group. They wouldn't be required to meet Kansas Open Meetings Act, Kansas Open Records Act. They wouldn't have to go through the appointment process, and they could continue to pursue a lot of the educational and events that they're desiring to do today. But it just wouldn't be as an advisory board of the City Commission. BPAC, our Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, created a little over a decade ago. They've made recommendations over time on our comp plan. Most recently, it was our Bicycle Pedestrian Systems Master Plan that was adopted in 2020, I believe. And there was also, back in 2008, charges within the bylaws to advise staff and promote ridership and education events throughout the community. They don't necessarily advise the City Commission directly right now, nor have they really undertaken any of those types of events. A lot of their recommendation and review comes through staff-generated items. So if staff is working on a project that is bicycle or pedestrian-oriented, they'll bring that to them, let them know, hear them out on some of those efforts that are occurring and take that into consideration, but ultimately, city staff through whether it's an internal design or we're working with the firm on design is ultimately going to design those to the existing standards and the budgets that we have. The Bike Ped Systems Plan has a clear outline of identified projects and prioritization over the next 20 years. So that's really going to be the guide for city staff as we look at capital improvement projects in the community. So the recommendation here was also to dissolve BPAC. This is something, too, that we understand the importance of bicycle and pedestrian systems within our community. So it doesn't preclude city staff and the city commission from continuing to engage the public on projects, holding forums, working through, hearing out bike ped issues. If major projects are occurring, we could engage individuals who are interested in this, but not have to, again, have the appointed process and go through the Kansas Open Meetings Act and manage a committee on a monthly basis. Those first three that I discussed they kind of had some, whether it was dissolution or consolidation themes to it. These next ones were we're just kind of providing an overview here. There's multiple options, but really we're looking for further feedback and direction from the City Commission on some of these boards. Arts and Humanities Advisory Board, it was created in 2011. From our understanding, at the request of AHA. They have offered input in projects in the past. The city flag was a recent example of that contest that occurred, the Fourth and Blue roundabout. Back in 2019, they went through a process with city staff to do a juried art competition in downtown, and they worked with downtown, and there was sculptures that were placed. The new donor-initiated art policy involves AHAB, so that any donor-initiated art goes through this board for their review. There's been a big desire from this group. It's certainly a motivated group who wants to be more involved, also wants more funding, wants more ability to have an impact on pursuing art projects. When we had the discussion with you all related to the donor-initiated art policy about a year ago, we made it clear that we didn't really have any dedicated staff to implement and pursue art projects. There wasn't a desire from a majority of the commission to add that staffing. So it is difficult to really pursue some of the efforts that AHAB wants to do and wants to do for the community that are worth doing for sure. So we're wanting to know if you want to provide further direction on the scope for that board, possibly provide additional staffing or funding to support some of their efforts. This is another, any of these boards we've discussed today could be dissolved. But we could still seek, input on art-related efforts and projects as they arise. So those are some of the options for the Arts and Humanities Advisory Board. Human Rights and Services Board, created quite a while ago. They have advised the commission in various ways. One of the most recent ones, though, was our non-discrimination ordinance from 2016, and then other, equal opportunity and civil rights, policies over time. I know they were involved in the DEI efforts, although there was a task force that this group did review and provide some feedback for the city commission. Their existence and the contributions that they have made for the city are great. They help our recognition and progress as a welcoming community for all people. So we understand the importance, of the Human Rights and Services Board, but it gets back to this is a group that hasn't had, specific agenda items in a while and is looking for that direction from the City Commission on what their purpose and business is and meeting frequency and charges. City University Fund Committee. This was created through our annexation agreement. So you did notice in the memo that they don't necessarily have bylaws. A little background for those who are unfamiliar. When this university was annexed into the city in 1994, this agreement decided that any revenue generated from sales taxes, whether city and county, as well as franchise fees that were generated on campus, would be put into a city university fund. And prior, I'll just say over time, it was generating anywhere from $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 a year in the last decade. In this group, we had city staff who would analyze that fund and figure out any projects that we think would be mutually beneficial for the city and the university. The university would also go through their efforts. They would talk with their cabinet, their SGA, their Student Governing Association, their faculty senate. We would come back as staff and make a recommendation to this City University Fund Committee and get their basically blessing to move forward with the recommended projects. And then ultimately those funds or those recommendations came to the City Commission, who had the ultimate say. Starting in 2020, we have been dedicating through that joint resolution that we had with President Myers and the City Commission to take $500,000 of that fund, which is quite substantial, and put it towards North Campus Corridor over the next 20 years. So there's a lot less money for that group to work with. which has led to some frustration from the group, just less projects to work with, not a lot to consider. Again, I mentioned too the process that, this group, there's a lot of internal coordination going on, and then this group meets about once or maybe twice a year once that recommendation is there, and they review it, and then it goes forward to the city commission. So looking for direction and feedback from the city commission. Any changes to the City University Fund Project Committee would result in us looking at the annexation agreement and amending it there. I have had recent conversations with university administration. They are open to discussions about no longer doing the committee and just keeping an internal process that's memorialized in the agreement, still with the intent of keeping the fund, making sure that we do projects that are mutually beneficial, and being on the same page and continuing that town-gown relationship, but possibly without the added work of working through a committee, which at times has been hard to get all of those 9 members available one time a year and be available for those meetings. So it can be a struggle there as well for this committee. The last one I was going to discuss today was the Food and Farm Council. You all are very familiar with it, as you just had the Food Systems Master Plan presented to you and you all accepted it. There was a lot of good recommendations that came out of that plan. The interlocal agreement called for a city liaison and a county liaison. The bylaws and that interlocal agreement really stipulate that the county provides the clerical administrative work. They provide the minutes, managing that board. We have had multiple staff liaisons serving this council over the last couple of years, and it's switched around a lot because we don't have many staff that are, truly knowledgeable and experts in, food systems. That expertise comes from the county representative who's with the Riley County Health Department. So one of our recommendations here was just to no longer regularly dedicate a staff position that would go to every meeting and kind of provide that duplication that the county is already providing. We certainly would want to continue the interlocal agreement and participate when they're needed. So we could still certainly give them contacts probably within the city manager's office that when something came up where they need city feedback on, we could provide the right representative based on the feedback to participate in whatever meetings that are occurring in that way. So this is a summary of some of those boards and committees that we're talking about tonight. Again, tonight we're just trying to get feedback and direction from you all and what you'd like to have staff pursue further, additional discussions you would like to have, and then we can continue, like I said, this discussion, which will take a few meetings to fully dive into a lot of these areas. But that's all I have for tonight, so we can do public comment if you'd like, or you could certainly ask any questions of staff and then do public comment, however you prefer. Mayor?
Thank you. If you have questions of Jared at this point, but then I'll have the public comment period followed by the commission discussion and further discussions.
Yeah, just one comment. Good briefing, Jared, and a great memo. Appreciate it.
Same here. Really liked how you put it together, and that memo gave us a lot of different options. One of the things I just wanted to call out, and you mentioned it, about how they have to follow the open meetings rules if they're, an official committee of the advisory committee. And I think on some of these where you're saying dissolve, but they could still maintain their own group and meet, I think that does actually help them out a lot, because technically with those open meeting rules, just exchanging a lot of emails between each other is an issue. You can't really do that. You have to, that's like, we can't, 3 of us, start trading emails or doing anything because we have to follow those rules. Also, we have Partner City going to be down the 3rd Thursday. Is there going to be a majority of the group there? Is that been declared?
That was something we noticed to the public that
right.
that group was going to do. That was an example. That there are others of it's difficult to talk about. You 5 know that the difficulty in Kansas Open Meetings Acts, and when you have a majority together, you can't talk city business. So not only is it difficult there, it's hard to educate 16 staff liaisons on all the rules of COMA, as well as those 160 individuals, because to them that's, for us it makes sense, but to them it's not something that they're thinking about COMA all the time. So you really have to be on that, and that's where a lot of the support has come in from our legal office and city manager's office when we need to step in and make sure that they're educated on what COMA entails.
Okay, I just wanted to call that out because, you do have some recommendations to dissolve, but I think those groups could still meet and the city commission can still listen to them. It just might be a lot easier for them to actually do stuff if they don't have all those restrictions.
Good presentation, but I don't agree with all your, the way you bullet pointed all of these. I think we need to start at the basics before we even discuss consolidation, dissolving, or anything of that sort. Basics in the sense how frequently someone should meet or groups meet, having them look again at their own bylaws. I don't know of COMA violations, but I know in our processes about training and such for each of them. So I think there is, I understand the recommendations, I understand the staff time, but I also, I know our strategic plan calls for community engagement, and, I've told both of you before, I don't think 160 is an overwhelming number in a 50,000 population community. When we're asking for more engagement, we're looking for less engagement in these areas if we do this. So those are discussions we'll have after public comment. But I did want to talk about the Food and Farm Council. We don't appoint any anybody to that. The mayor doesn't designate any appointments, so I'm not sure
No,
why.
we do.
the mayor does.
I'm sorry, the mayor.
But the recommendations come from the county or the Food and Farm Council, because
I
we
thought-
don't
So
typically know
It says
anybody.
to remove the staff liaison.
I know, that's what his recommendation is.
just to clarify, so there's 15 members on the Food and Farm Council. Of those 15, there are 6 city-appointed members of the public that are serving that. Our recommendation is strictly related to having a staff liaison at all of their meetings, and more so providing them a contact probably within the city manager's office, so that if something is coming up on an agenda or they have a recommendation within their plan that deals specifically with the city, they can reach out to us and we can ensure the right individual is there. Because to our point of dedicating a specific staff liaison, like I was saying, food systems aren't really in our wheelhouse, and the county is the expert on that.
Yeah, except in this case, we're talking about the broader Riley County region, where Manhattan has the biggest part of, whether it's food insecurity or whatever it might be when we discuss those things. So I think those are conversations to be had, but I will be happy to open it up for public comment when everybody's ready. But there is more discussion to have here.
Okay, other commissioner questions? Okay, thank you, Jared. I think you gave us a pretty thorough overview. Lots of details left to go. At this point, I'd like to open the public comment section, so anyone that would like to speak to any one of these advisory boards that's been mentioned this evening, you're welcome, you're invited to come forward and comment. Some of you are chairs, some of you are board members. Please just come on up and give your name and address and what board you're on. Welcome.
Thank you. Vern Worka, 3305 Municipal Drive. Dobry wieczór. Jestem Vern Worka. Vasini maszczyny komisarz. Dekwi za. Jestem Movid. Good evening. I'm Vern Worka. Esteemed city commissioners, thank you for allowing me to speak. Some clarifications are needed in regard to the dissolution proposal of the Partner City Committee. First, it is noted the committee has no bylaws. Well, the committee spent considerable time crafting updated bylaws. The committee approved new bylaws, which were submitted to the city administration months ago. However, those bylaws have yet to make it to you, the commission. Second, the committee responded to and implemented required changes to comply with COMA. Open discussion occurred during meetings as to the nature of the needed changes, but at no time did the committee take any formal action that could be considered a refusal to comply with COMA. Third, formal agendas and the recording of minutes have always been followed through the existence of this committee. They're all on file. Fourth, in regard to the committee being social in nature, the City Commission resolution of May 1st, 2007 charges the committee to plan, develop, promote, and coordinate partner city activities, including, but not limited to, visits of individuals and exchanges of delegations, educational and informational exchanges, and events with partner city communities, their nations, their cultures. These charges have been fulfilled with an ongoing relationship with Czech students attending Kansas State University, who conduct language classes, provide cultural educational presentations, offering opportunities for Czech students to experience the culture of Manhattan, Kansas, informational exchanges with government officials of our Czech partner city, exchanging information and support for Kansas Czech organizations and festivals. The nature of the charge lends itself to being social in nature, in that the committee is required to engage with people and institutions. Fifth, the May 1st, 2007 resolution contains wording that pertains to making formal recommendations to the City Commission in terms of policies, objectives, and selection of partner cities. While existing policies and objectives have been adequate to fulfill the original partner cities agreement, which was dated April 18, 2006, there has not been a need to recommend changes, and the selection of a partner city was formalized in the 2006 document. The proposed, yet to be approved bylaws expand the membership of the committee to take on future responsibilities of adding partner cities. Sixth, the committee is charged with assisting with effective coordination of applicable activities. An example that was mentioned earlier this evening is the joint program undertaken by the committee in the interactive display booth that's going to be part of the MHK Third Thursday event set to take place this week. Finally, the city administration argues there is no justification for the use of city resources. Question: if the intent of the current city administration was ultimately to dissolve the committee, why did the administration have the committee go through the long bylaws writing process, then not present the committee approved bylaws for formal approval? Was this pertinent use of resources? Why was the committee allowed to find itself in the untenable position where the committee learns of this dissolution days before a major event that was in the planning stages for several months? The committee volunteers put in many hours to meet the bylaws requirements, comply with COMA, and continue planning to carry out the charge of the committee by participating in a major community event, only to be told the formal existence of the committee cannot be justified. The Partner City Committee plays a relevant role in promoting the Manhattan, Kansas cultural and educational opportunities on the local, state, regional, and international stages. Děkuji za pozornost. Hezký večer. Nasledano. Thank you for your attention. Have a nice evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Worka. Appreciate you coming.
Who's manning the timer?
There isn't one. The next person, and you signed in, right? I haven't yet. Oh, please, come on up. Mr. Worker, did you sign in? I didn't think so. There's a sign-up sheet up here, so if you can work your way back up, and there's room for both of you, I think. But do speak into one of the microphones. If you stand in the middle, nobody hears you.
Hello, my name is Hillary Walleen. I'm on the Arts and Humanities Advisory Board, and I have been for over 6 years. I have been extremely fortunate to serve on this board. We are extremely motivated to create more opportunities for the public to appreciate and engage in art. And it doesn't mean just visual arts. It also means humanities. We meet monthly, and we always have a full agenda, and we always have dedicated conversations to what can we do. Now, I know in the past we've discussed that the city does not have the resources to fund any art. It doesn't have the resources to have a dedicated person on the staff, but we honestly believe that we can handle the protocol for what we need to do to have more arts and humanities in Manhattan with the committee members that we have. We have incredibly skilled and professional artists on our board, and they do know how to navigate. And we have discussed in the last couple meetings applying for certain grants that will help apply to create more art in Manhattan. So we do not rely on the city, and we do not rely on the Greater Manhattan Community Foundation, because unfortunately they've sort of become the go-to organization for everything, and they just can't do it all. There have been discussions in the past couple meetings of doing things that would involve the community, Chautauqua Festival, a film festival, bringing a stage that we could create in Aggieville so that bands could perform outdoors. These are things that we want to embrace that are not just visual art, but we want to involve the community in a way that they are not required to go into a museum or an established business to appreciate art. And by doing this, we're bringing in all sorts of different elements of different people. And this is what we want to do, to welcome people to Manhattan and give them options of what that we can offer, and then shows that Manhattan is a vibrant, lively community. So I appreciate your time, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Hillary. Welcome.
Hi,
A
Karen
familiar
McCullough,
face.
1516 Leavenworth. I just want to echo what Hillary has to say about the Arts and Humanities Board. First of all, I think it's very important that we make clear to you, we have never asked for a full-time person, nor do we feel we even need a part-time person. What we really would like to do, and what we tried to do, is have an art policy where there would be a dedicated percent of building that would go for art in the building, such as the new gyms that are out that are pretty unadorned, shall we say. We asked for that kind of art policy. We received a donor art policy, which is not what we asked for. Donor art, if someone wants to give art to the city, it is beyond the scope of our committee to evaluate whether it's, what the value of it is and that kind of thing. That's not what our committee was intended to be. We have no problem with the open meetings law. We read the Riot Act by Katie Jackson. We're very careful about that kind of thing. Basically, we just want to be a focal point for art in the community. And we've all been to other communities, and when we go to places like Mizzou or Iowa State or places like that, everybody comes back and says, wow, Columbia, the art, the public art that was there. We want to attract a lot of people to work at MBAF and County. And to do so, we have to have a community that's receptive to positive things, not just sports. So thank you very much.
Would someone else want to start making your way forward?
Good evening.
Good evening. Hi, Kevin.
Kevin Nolet, 331 North 14th Street, here on behalf of Kansas State University regarding the City University Fund. If it helps with your decision-making process, K-State will work with the committee as we have for the last few years, or if you choose to dissolve the committee, we will work with the City Commission to redo some language in the annexation agreement to show how we'll work with the city in work projects that benefit both the city and the university with the funding left over above the $500,000 threshold. We'll help any way we can do that.
Thank you, Kevin.
Oops.
Good evening.
Good evening,
I
hi.
might not be short enough to make a statement here, I don't know.
You have a strong voice.
I'm Dave Stewart, 1001 Overhill here in Manhattan. And if the technology worked, each of you as commissioners received a communication from me. I hope it did. And I don't want to stand here and reiterate that. But I do want to simply share a few comments about the possible merger or consolidation of SSAB and the Special Alcohol Funds Committee. In informal discussions, I have not heard any objection at all from members of SSAB for that kind of, maybe we should say combination at this point, whether it's a merger or consolidation or whatever. I have heard some concerns about the workload that would be created. I can't speak for Alcohol Funds Committee. I don't know how busy they are, but I can tell you that SSAB is very busy taking care of our assignment on your behalf. We meet on a monthly basis with the exception of maybe 2 to 3 months out of the year. We hold on-site visits in mid-year to check on agency progress toward goals and their management of budget. We also have several evenings of hearings in preparation for the budget for the following year, and a number of other activities that that create a pretty good workload for us. Right now, I think we are down 5 members, and part of that is due to some members who can no longer serve because they have reached the 2-term limit. I don't know what the other reasons are. It may have to do with workload, but my concern is that if there is a consolidation of some sort, and I think we just need to look at this with eyes wide open. We're going to have to learn how to work together or how to do that work. There's going to have to be some orientation and some planning in terms of how we consolidate those efforts. Again, I've not heard any objection to doing that, but I do think that's a time issue. And the other thing that I would be very concerned about is if there is dissolution. And I'm generally concerned about that because I think what we do want is community involvement, community engagement in our city and in our city government. So my hope would be that you would find a way to encourage that rather than to move away from it. So thank you. Like I say, I have communicated to you in writing, and if you have questions or comments, I would welcome that.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Vincent Tracy, 304 Knoxbury Drive, and currently I'm on the SSAB and was on the City University Fund till that term expired. Basically, the biggest problem that the social services have in Manhattan, and we on the board have, is we don't know from year to year what funds are going to come from where. And we can't tell those agencies coming in, you're going to have to limit your request for funds. We do ask them to justify the funds that they're asking for, and that's the purpose in us going out and having those visits, to see that they're taking the need of the people in the community and meeting those needs. So I'm asking you to give us guidance on how we can get a budget set and how you want it to be taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you, Vince. Would someone else make their way forward?
Hello, my name is Brandon Savage. I'm also a member of the SSAB committee. Have served as the vice chair in the past and just was nominated as a vice chair again. I'm on my second term. Yeah, I'll kind of echo both of the comments there. I think Vince's comment about direction would certainly be helpful. I think that a few of you have actually served on this board. Because we historically have not received direction on the budget, that does make it very difficult to try to figure out how much to give out. And you know, we do our best based on historical trends on need, certainly concerned about new agencies that pop up and are fulfilling a need within the community as well. You know, we gave some recommendations this year on how we think that can be potentially approached, but that would certainly simplify some of our discussions if we knew exactly this is the number we need to hit, and we just need to be able to allocate this pot of money to all the existing agencies. Although not opposed, as Dave mentioned, definitely am concerned about the idea of consolidating them, although there is certainly some overlap between organizations that apply for SSAB funds and the special alcohol funds. It is my understanding it's less than half a dozen, and so it's still going to be an increase of almost doubling. If the SSAB remained and you took the workload of the special alcohol committee and put it on there, it's double the amount of agencies that we would have to do site visits for. The deliberations for each would be separate, and so those are going to take twice as much time to sit through and allocate and debate SSAB, usually one night for several hours, and then have to do the same thing later. So it's, you know, if that is the inclination of the commission, you need to probably have double the amount of board members on the SSAB than there are currently, if you want to keep the workload the same for individual board members. I would hope that, as Dave mentioned, that the second option of dissolving both, that does seem to be a kind of fly at the face of shared governance and getting input from community members. Those are kind of my thoughts on it, having seen it up close for the last 3.5, 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Colleen Lind, 2048 Hunting Avenue. I really appreciate your time and staff's time in doing this important work, connecting it to your strategic goal of connected city. I would just emphasize, as Commissioner Reddy did, that if that's our goal, we should be thinking about that in terms of these changes that we would make. I don't have firm opinions on any of the dissolutions because I haven't had time to talk to people who have served on these boards, but I do have some reflections just hearing the staff report. First of all, the 26 vacancies is unfortunate, but really only 1.2 for every board that we have, so not terribly surprising. And there is an argument to be made that vacancies is not a reason for reducing number of boards. It's a reason to do outreach differently. I would also say that agendas that can't be filled is not necessarily an argument for eliminating a board. It's more, to my way of thinking, a way to reduce the number of meetings. Just because a board doesn't need to meet as frequently doesn't mean that the board isn't needed. Regarding social services and the special alcohol advisory committees, the previous speakers well echoed exactly what I was thinking, which is if the reason for these boards is to involve citizens in decision-making, then certainly dissolving the boards would not be the ideal solution. Combining or consolidating could meet that need, But I would be concerned, as Mr. Stewart was mentioning, that we don't want to overload any of these board members because we want to make it practical for volunteer citizens to be able to serve on these boards. If there's too much work for them to do, that it's not practical to serve, then essentially we're saying you can't serve. So I would just ask that you be cognizant of that, of how much workload would be required if those would be combined. Regarding BPAC, an advisory board that I have sat in on several meetings and is important to me and I think of great importance to the community. Once again, I don't have a firm opinion because I haven't been able to speak with anyone on BPAC. I will observe, however, that as I understood the rationale from staff in this report, the main impetus for having the committee in the first place was to garner citizen input on these specific plans for developing bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. Now that we have a 20-year plan, we don't need that kind of input. All of us know that plans are everything, or planning is everything and plans are nothing. That 20-year plan is going to change, and there is going to need to be continual input as new developments develop, as the city changes. There will be continual need for input on that plan. And most importantly, I would say that all of these changes, I would strongly encourage you, commissioners, before you make any decisions, that you hear from members of these committees as you think about the best way to revise or change them above and beyond what you're doing in a meeting like this today. It's entirely, because I'm not a BPAC member, it's entirely possible that I missed it, but on an email thread that I was looking at today, it looks to me like the BPAC members learned of this memo yesterday, which apparently you all had since August 16th. I think that really undercuts the idea of connected city. I'm concerned that these changes are coming from, mostly from city staff and not from consideration and recommendations from the advisory committees themselves. So I think there needs to be extra effort to hear from these advisory committees about their ideas about how they could be improved or, if needed, dissolved. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak this evening? If you do, please come forward. Okay. Gone. I'll close the public hearing, and commissioners can begin to talk about, provide some feedback and ask questions, however that works out. Do you want to go through in the order that that Jared presented this evening? So, first one would be the big one, I guess, SSAB and the Alcohol Committee.
Mayor, I think before I discuss them bullet point by bullet point, I think I want to talk in a holistic manner of how we wanted to talk about the boards.
Mm-hmm. Please do.
This
I think
is-
it's a good introduction.
Yeah, to me, this is the end product after all of the other discussions take place. And Colleen, I had talked to to Ron and Jared earlier that we should, whatever we discuss here, should go back to those advisory boards and see what is working, what's not working, how can they be more efficient? Is it fewer meetings? Is it, meetings with certain agenda pieces that we provide? What is it that is working? For example, even in the Social Services Advisory Board and the Special Alcohol Funds Board, is the application process arduous? What can we make it easier? How can we make it easier? What are we looking for? And all of that. And I think it's important to understand that in our strategic plan, when I said we put the well-being of people at the heart of everything we do, that is our mission statement. And I think having 160 people involved in our decision-making process is a really good thing, and we should probably be advocating for more. But putting people on advisory boards, we need to look at a different way to send that message out. It can't just fall on one commissioner or 5 commissioners. I think outreach and all of these things, other communities do it in a different manner. I think we can fill those spots. But having community input on all of these organizations, they have a certain passion or a certain expertise that they're coming in with. Some of our boards have a geographic parameter. We maybe need to looking at removing that and seeing how it is. Some of them, for example, the Airport Advisory Board or others, the Historic Resources Board, have certain expertise you need to have, whether it's an architect or design, whatever it might be. So we need to look at how to improve that interest form to make sure the people that are signing up know what they're signing up for and how we are selecting them as well. So I think that's something I want to look at for all of these boards before deciding which one should be dissolved and which one shouldn't be dissolved. And then, like I said, there are organizations in other cities, Topeka, Lawrence, or Salina, where they have a well-functioning art advisory board, and they have a funding source that comes into it. But because our arts board doesn't have a funding source, doesn't mean it needs to be dissolved. They probably need different types of agendas, or maybe need to meet more infrequently, but with some mission and such. So I want to talk about all of those options before considering doing away with them.
Commissioner, if I may, I do just want to provide the governing body maybe the rationale as to the process that we've been taking and the timeline and the order, I guess, to your question. And really, it gets back to kind of that organizational chart, which is why we took this approach of city staff providing the city commission some background and review of what's occurring, some historical context of a lot of these boards, but really with the understanding that these boards and committees are in existence because of your desire, right? So these boards are created by you, so we want to ensure that their existence is still desired by the governing body and the city commission, so that we can involve these boards and committees and their members in possibly further developing some of those more administrative questions that we have of how often they meet, what should their member makeup be, but even the bylaws to those extents, and that first part of each of their bylaws, which is usually 5 or 6 bullets of kind of what are the key things that board should do. That is why we felt we needed to get the city commission involved first to understand, do you still want these 21 boards to exist? What generally do you want them to do? And then we can move forward with that discussion with the city commission. I do also just want to talk a little bit about the civic engagement piece of it. We certainly are involving the community in efforts that we're doing. We've done it, I guess maybe efficiently recently in some of our efforts related to Aggieville. We created a temporary steering committee of community members. We did the temporary committees for our recreation centers, for the aquatics group is another that comes to mind. We're looking at redoing our downtown plan, and we're going to create a committee. DEI is a good one, where this group and past city commissions gave a specific charge to the public, and they appointed a group, and they met and provided that recommendation. And then if we need to bring them back, or if we need to do other projects, we can engage them that way. So there are those. We're not trying to, I guess, say abandon that civic engagement, because we do feel that that's important.
So I understand what you're saying about those other, I consider them like task forces that had a beginning and an end, and that's what they signed up for. Yep. These didn't have like a beginning and an end. It was an ongoing. So I think I am not in favor of, so if that's the discussion, I'd rather take all of those back to those boards, those advisory boards or committees, and I am for keeping all of them at this point until I get more feedback from them, because I haven't heard from them. This meeting came up really quickly, and I was expecting it more in October, and I was expecting some of the boards to have some discussion also before us going top down. I'd rather have it come from bottom up to see, hey, we're not doing anything. Really no reason for us to meet. As far as staff time, I think we need to make, like if we have fewer meetings for some of these, that will alleviate some of that staff time. And maybe different types of staff need to be on it. Not a director of finance may not need to be on SSAB or other boards. So I think those are some things we can do better as far as staff time and being efficient, but still being active. For example, the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, they probably don't need to meet monthly, but maybe quarterly. Once the master plan is going, they should probably be updated because they're the ones who utilize it. They're the ones who know more about it than I do. And I think that's something, if there's a interest in that, and that is a committee that wants to make sure our city's moving forward in it, that probably still needs to be a discussion that needs to happen. So that's where I am at as far as should we keep them and should we go back and talk to them about this.
What is the status? I've heard about the bylaws for about the last year as different boards and committees have been working with the city attorney to develop them. Are they all finished now?
No.
No. Okay.
We have had a handful of boards that have looked at their bylaws and provided some recommendations. However, while that process was going, city staff understood that we needed to holistically look at bylaws and the processes that we were taking, and we knew that the city commission wanted to have this discussion. So we didn't want to be doing work that could be undone. So there were boards that were reviewing their bylaws and providing updates, and some boards made recommendations, but we had not brought those forward yet because we knew we were trying to holistically look at them.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment, it sounds like everybody's saying, oh, the city staff just sprung this on the commission without knowledge. I've been pushing for it for years. So, if people think, oh, the city staff initiated this on their own, that would not be the case because I think I had some input to that.
Well, I think that this proposal is the part that we are just seeing. And the history is all of us have asked for this. We want to start, and this is just the start from what Jared said. They expect us to have several meetings about this. So this isn't the end, it's the beginning, I guess, is how I interpreted it from what he said. Okay.
Well, maybe to go down our list here, since we have it. I mean, on the first one, social services and special alcohol, I'm definitely leaning towards that consolidation of that. Don't want to dissolve the groups, and we could look at the number of people for as far as that the workload goes. I totally agree with the people who spoke that said they could use guidance as far as what the budget is. I think on special alcohol, we should get staff and get a projection of what we think those revenues are going to be so we can give them a target on that. And then for social services, like we voted the last meeting for 10%, I think we should start out ahead of time before they do the work and come up with what our target is and be able to give it to them so that way they'll know ahead of time what it is that they need to work with. But I think there is overlap between these two. Special alcohol does have some more specific nature things they have to look at, but we do have the same group applying to both. I think, looking at a possible joint, application and be able to do one site visit, and also this group would then have close to $1 million budget, albeit there's some special considerations with special alcohol, but can look at it from that community-wide view for that amount of money and, how best to use that total pool.
I think it would be important also to have some specific direction about how it would work with a combined board so that we aren't just turning them loose. We need some structure to provide some structure.
I think that's, we can do a number of ways. We can look at both their application process, have the two boards meet and kind of talk through how that could go through and work out some recommendations. It sounds like we have a number of openings. It seems like between the two, we could fill some of those openings, and then if we wanted to add to that.
I don't think filling the board at the moment, we're just down some right now. People are reluctant to even be nominated, and I've been reluctant to. Why would I nominate people right now for SSAB and the alcohol board when we're going to be combining it? And I'd like to know when we're gonna be combining it, so I know whether to go ahead and make the appointments or
No,
not.
no, I agree with you.
I mean,
think that's
things are
good.
that shaky. Do we want to appoint somebody and 3 months later say, oops, your board's
No,
gone?
I wouldn't think you would. I think
don't
you'd
wanna
want to
do
go ahead and
that.
take a look and
I
see how
haven't
we put
wanted
that
to do
together.
that. Yeah.
We go down the list here. My comment on that is, I agree with what John said. I'd like to see them consolidated. I've had some discussions with past and current board members, and one of the concerns is you'd have to have at least 15 on the board because of the workload thing. And the way I figure it right now, if you combined them, you'd have 15, because one's short 5, the other's short 4. That would give us 15 without having to do anything. I'd also like to see all this accomplished by the end of December, so that in January, the commission could give guidance, as John said, is exactly, what are the targets and what are the expectations. And that guidance could get detailed, like I've talked to people about, there was some discussion about the $250,000 that goes to the school board, each year out of the special alcohol board, and is that really what we want to continue doing? I'm sort of more in favor of using it like we did years ago to pay for the co-responders at the police department, because then that lowers the budget for the police department and the city. And that is a good program, a proven program. So there's a lot that gets into that, but step one is we just simply consolidate the two boards, and then let them hash out how they want to operate. And we might want to consider doing away with that term limit requirement. That may be an issue. If there's not that many people that want to apply to the boards, is the term limits really a good thing? And so I'm not hard over on that, but, the board needs to consider that part of it. And over the years, I know Mike Dodson tried real hard to try to get the two boards to look at the overlap, and we made spreadsheets, and it just always seemed to me that the two were operating in silos and didn't communicate. And so, a group will go in and ask for money from both sides and sometimes get it and sometimes not. And then I think one year with the Be Able group that, came up in discussions, one of the boards said, sorry, we can't give you any money because you haven't been in operation for a year. The other one leaned a little bit towards that and cut their funding in half. But that was inconsistent. And part of that, again, I lay on the commission. We didn't give guidance, and we should have, on that. So this will cause us to have some consistency, and people can stand back and look at, the big picture of how this money can better be allocated, across the community. Because I think, one of my personal concerns on guidance is if you keep adding groups every year, it just dilutes the amount of money, and we need to look at those that really make a difference. And as I've always said, the priority for me has always been, okay, you look at RCPD's, task, which of these agencies really help RCPD? Well, clearly the emergency shelter, the crisis center, certain ones like that give us a bigger payback as a community than others. And that's the challenge for the board, and that's the kind of guidance I think the commission has to lay out there. So I'm all for the consolidation.
I'm not for the consolidation, and I think the points laid out were along the same thought process I had. I think both of them have a different charge, and it would be good to have, I talked with Michelle Sink from Big Brothers Big Sisters, and they applied to both organizations, and she was saying it was not an arduous process. She has visits from both organizations, from both boards, and it's been good for her to talk to them because it's a different charge for each of the organizations. And I do think it needs that focus from those committee members, just to focus on their charge and not have to understand the do's and don'ts of both of the social organizations that they're working for funding purposes. I do think it needs a budget target for the Social Services Advisory Board. If we said 520 or whatever it is this year, maybe 550, then they know what to do with that for the Social Services Advisory Board. The Alcohols Board already has a set amount, so I don't think they've had a problem about how to use their funds. The structure, I think filling the positions is really not a problem as far as doing away with term limits. I think sometimes term limits are important because some people stay on there for forever. I think it's good to have a rotation, have 3 term limits or 2 term limits, have a little gap. If you want to come back on, you can come back on. Right now, they have not been appointed because, like the mayor said, she wasn't sure if they were going to be consolidated or not because lack of applicants. The structure, I would like to know more about the application process for both of them. That one I'm not aware of, to just see if we can be more efficient in the application process itself. If our board members are having too much reading content, or if they're having to put too much time into visits, how can we be better with that, be more efficient, utilizing their time as well as the advisory board, the organizations that are applying for funds. A December deadline for some kind of structure and budget target is a good goal to have so that they can start in January. And sometimes when you have, like Big Brothers and Big Sisters or Boys and Girls Club, when they apply to both funds, they know exactly what they're doing and they're applying like they should be because they've been around for a while and they have somebody designated to do that. When you have a more local nonprofit group, they have maybe staff of 2 or 3, so the executive director is in charge of all of it, but it makes it easier when they know exactly how to speak to individuals in their community. Most of them know most of our members. So it builds that relationship, makes that relationship a little bit stronger. So my position as far as consolidation is not to do that for SSAB or for the special alcohol funds, but give them more structure in their application process and a budget target for SSAB so they know exactly what they're working with, so we don't have to go back and tell them to do a do-over on that.
Well, put me on the list of trying to combine them simply because I don't think that the SSAB needs to go every year to, they may start going every other year, do half of them one year, half of them the next on the site visits, because looking at these are, the ones that we're funding this year, 3/4 of them were the ones that we were funding them back in 1999 when I was on the Social Service Advisory Board. So I know there's a value in having the board members who may not be familiar with the organization show up at the site and do the visit and kind of get a feel for what happens. But I just don't think, there's no reason that every year you guys need to go traipse down to Flint Hills Breadbasket or over there to Shepherd's Crossing or Boys and Girls Club, because generally they've been in business long enough that they're a trusted partner with the city to provide services to the people. So while there may be, I understand there is benefit for the new board members to see and feel and touch what the agencies do. I don't think we have to, every year we don't have to show up on everybody's doorstep. I wouldn't think the application process should be sufficient to provide the information that the board would need to know. So I think when it comes to workload, there's no reason we can't make that workload less by doing something like that. That's it.
I would like, I don't know that I favor consolidation, but if we did, we would need to generate some structure and for the consolidation process instead of just throwing people together with a common purpose. I think it would be important to have that well thought out ahead of time and not for their benefit. I mean, and it could be that you could have a joint meeting and actually start talking about that process and how it might work so that we do have order and it flows rather easier rather than making it more difficult, because I can see people just being confused and saying, how are we going to do this? And and I can see the staff person also having questions about how that might work. So, but I don't want it to go just to city staff to make the decisions. I think that this money and this process is important for the community to participate in. And I know that there's a level of satisfaction in participating and helping and making what I would call making a difference. So
No, right, and if consolidation is the way the commission's going to go, I agree. We just need more structure in the application process itself because we don't want to overburden the committee members, and we want to make sure that more people want to be on the board and do that legwork from a variety of backgrounds. So I think it just makes it better for the entire community to be, that want to be on it, that have, that can serve on it, and be in charge of that pocket of taxpayer funds.
Ryusha,
Not
I
in
don't-
charge, but
I
give
don't think there's
recommendations.
any way that we do not have this new application process. So I don't expect the application process to be up and going in time to make this December.
I meant, I don't mean the interest form, I meant just the way they
Their
they
app-
can work on.
The agency
Agencies apply,
application.
not-
Okay,
not the
I would-
interest forms.
I would accept
Yeah.
that, I agree. Rena, do you have some comments? I mean, I really want to hear from the staff liaison, I want to hear from the, the members of the board. I'd like for them to go back and talk among each other, having heard this conversation.
Good evening.
Good evening, Rena. Rena Neal, Director of Finance.
Sorry, excuse me. When you mentioned having the two groups get together, have a joint meeting, I was thinking the same thing. In terms of, just want to give some numbers. In 2022, SSAB granted to 10 agencies, and the request for this year was 13. Special Alcohol Fund, 2022, 15, and then this year is, for 2023, will be 16. SSAB has 15 members. Special Alcohol Fund has 9 members per their bylaws. There are 5 agencies that overlap: Big Brothers Big Sisters, Boys and Girls Club, Thrive, Sunflower Casa, and Be Able. I did talk to Jason Hilders, our Deputy City Manager, today to discuss possible next steps, and we did talk about bringing the two committees or boards together to just discuss their thoughts about how we should proceed after we got some guidance from you all.
Okay. Might be 2 meetings. Might not get it done in the first one.
In addition to that, Mayor, I do think there's an opportunity for the oversight of both of those boards to come within our office and gain insights and feedback from you early in the year on budgets and just overall direction. Because if there's 2 advisory boards that come up during the budget process more frequently, it's SSAB and Special Alcohol. And we've actually had the commission give us guidance in January or February in years prior on that budgeted amount because it was so debated amongst the 5 commissioners at the time. But it is a very intense process. When finance took that over, it was a number of years ago. They were at a different staffing level and they were at a different point in time. And we've acknowledged it could easily come within our office and be more engaging with the commission throughout the process. There's a lot of site visits. There's a tremendous amount of work that those board members do with those agencies, as you all know. And it'd be worth a look to see if you want all of that to continue. And whether or not those applications could modify, whether or not the process could be modified, and more engaged with the commission. My preference would be to get it out of the budget process completely and have it resolved before we even get there. Because the budget is so massive at $189 million, that process is dominating an entire evening on our budget.
And derailing the budget discussion last time.
It can. It
Yeah.
can. It doesn't every year, but it can, Mayor. You're right. And especially when there's disagreement on the value, the organizations, the agencies themselves. Mm-hmm. So it's a much more politically charged process. And I think that is better handled in our office. And it's no knock. Marina's done an excellent job. And I think in the last several years, all the board members have always provided excellent reviews from our staff. It's really more about the engagement with you as a commission that we need to handle.
I think that the last January, the budget for this year was so unknown. We wouldn't have known what to set it at because we didn't know what the revenue picture was going to be for this year. So, and last year was worse than that.
Yeah, special alcohol for sure.
Wasn't
for
much
sure.
money.
Yep.
So it fluctuates from year to year. Okay. Thank you for that. So the boards can talk about that, and you can also throw that in when you have your meeting with them. Okay. Shall we move on to the next one? Is there more to say here? Okay. The Partner City Advisory Committee.
Well, I'll probably do some in bulk here. I'm gonna skip down to the bottom two, City University Fund, which I kind of lean on that one to get the city staff and university staff to work that out and not have the group, especially now that the funding's a lot smaller. I think it'd be more efficient just to have them get that figured out. In 20 years, we can look at maybe starting it up again type.
I was going to suggest that that we keep the committee to consider the amounts over $500,000, because that is going to grow. And that way there's some discussion. It's a reason for the university and the city to actually have a common project that they work on.
Yeah. Again, I think we just disagree. I prefer just to have the city staff and the university staff work on that one. And then I agree with the recommendation on food and farm as far as, still appoint the members, but leave it to the county who's got the expertise in that. Frankly, in the group of the others, personally, I think that a lot of those functions in private groups that don't have to follow those rules could actually work a lot better, because they can correspond any way they want and come up with their recommendations. And I think the commission would still be open to their recommendations where they were official advisory board or not. I don't know if there's some other designation that you can do. If we are to keep them, I think we definitely need to look at the number of times that they meet to cut down on the administrative effort, because I am sensitive to the amount of staff time. I do appreciate you guys coming up with the bylaws and things of that nature. I didn't know that you guys had worked on that on the partner city. And again, that's where I kind of stand on that middle part that's there.
I think, if we're going to start with the City University Fund, I think it's still good to keep that committee, even if they're not meeting, if they have $150,000, and maybe, have a resolution or an agreement that says, whenever those 20 years are up, that's when we can reignite it again. But we're losing the SGA group. Even if they meet just once a year or something, it feels, it feels awkward not to still be engaged at the university, at least even in a nominal amount of funds, even if it's just once a year, just to keep that relationship going and have an end period, because eventually we'll get that $500,000 back. Otherwise, I'm afraid it'll forever be gone into whatever space. I suppose I'm okay with removing a staff liaison with the food and farm. I'm not a stickler about it one way or the other. Between the partner study and the bike and peds and the arts and humanities and the HRSB, I think they do need further direction. I did review the bylaws for 3 of them, I believe, for all of them, because I didn't have the partner city one, but all the rest of them, and they have some things very similar to the resolution we have for all boards, such as absentees. So I don't know if we keep track of absentees or how they're gone, or if they stay. I don't know if anybody keeps track of them. There's also about public comment, so that's been like a cut and paste, so there's consistency in that. And maybe, considering staff time, all 3 of those don't have to meet every single month. It can be quarterly.
I don't think anyone's ever brought to my attention as mayor that someone didn't attend a bunch of times.
Right.
And I did find out that someone on a board didn't attend for the whole year.
I don't
So
think they know their own bylaws.
I made sure I didn't reappoint that person is all, but
Right.
I hadn't heard it after 6 months or anything like that.
So that's something maybe the boards need to do, is review their bylaws. Oftentimes when you come onto an advisory board and a new person, nobody reviews the bylaws with you, and then the chair doesn't know the bylaws themselves. So I think that's something that probably should be reviewed. Several of the bylaws have it where they meet quarterly. And if these are some of those organizations that want to change their bylaws where they meet quarterly, that might be more conducive to staff time and to their passions and their service to the city. So I think that's where I fall on the, partner city and the others.
So really just reducing the
Number of meetings.
so that it fits with the work that they have to do.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I just go down the list from the top on the partner city thing, and I'm good friends with Ed Klimak, and that partner city thing's done a good job, but I'm for just dissolving it simply because, this whole concept goes along with lean management, and that board can continue to exist. Call yourself the Partner City Project or whatever. It'll just be outside the formal structure of the city and continue doing great things like that flag plaza that didn't cost any tax money. And like Ed working on the Johnny Cobb project, not a tax dollar put into that either, and that's just outstanding. And I want to see that continue, but let's just get it out from under the bureaucracy of the city. And then I feel the same way about the bicycle committee. They've done great stuff. In fact, they've changed the culture. I think anything we look at now, we're looking at, putting in a bike path. We're putting in a protected guardrail on the bridges that we built recently. So that's in the culture of city planning. And again, that group needs to then just simply, the Bike Manhattan Committee, and then you can go on your bike rides and you won't be in violation of COMA. Unfortunately, no one's chasing you around and trying to report you to the Ethics Committee on that because you don't have any enemies, which is great. But once again, that's one that it can still be efficient. It does no harm to dissolve it, and it saves some staff time. The arts one is an interesting one because I would also pretty much dissolve that and create an arts project simply because I believe that will smooth the idea of funding. Because the hang up here is funding, and the Greater Manhattan Community Foundation has been trying to give you money, and there's some kind of conflict with the process with city staff and involving the money, and I think that would be resolved simply by creating a separate organization. You'd end up with a good funding source through Vern, and I believe that would actually move along the idea that the group basically has on doing some more arts projects. The Human Rights and Services Board, I think we just leave them in place, but ask them to please maybe follow their bylaws, which is meet once a quarter. Because the group really doesn't have, when it was originally formed, it had a very broad mission, and that got involved in ordinances in 2011 that got voted out because that became a board that was going out and operating as a civil rights board and looking at things. It doesn't do that anymore. And so they've really got sort of a vague mission, and maybe if they meet once a quarter, if there's an issue they want to tackle, then fine, do so. But I wouldn't disband that one. City University, I like the idea basically because the 20 years of commitment of $500,000 pretty much diluted that. There is some money going in there on the scooters, because I think we collect it there. But I think a good way to handle that was the recommendation that it just gets split 50-50. University takes half, spend it on what you like. City takes half, spend it on what we like until 20 years passes. Then maybe we put it back in place when we get greater funds. And I say that because the process has been arduous. It involves the university president and the commission, and we redrew a flow chart on it several years ago to try to smooth that out. We've had arguments. One year, I think the university wanted to put a restroom in McCain Auditorium, and that really didn't fit. How does that benefit the city? And we have those kind of little hassles, and one way to do away with that is just split it 50-50, piece of cake. K-State decides what to do, the city decides what to do, and we're good to go. So that's what I would do on that. And I'm all for removing the liaison on the Farm Council. I think the county's already got one. They should take the lead on it. And of course, we'll continue to appoint people to that particular board.
So on the 50-50 split, is that after 20 years? So that's year 21?
No, what I'm saying is we would go ahead and
Yeah.
do the 50-50 split until that North Campus corridor or edge district thing goes away. Then we might want to put the committee back in place because now they'd be dealing with
So you'd
substantial
eliminate it for now?
Yes.
I see, okay.
Well, I'd like to see the partner city group still continue to meet and do stuff. I was one of the people that went over to Dobricovice back in
Yeah.
2007, 5. 8, I guess it was, 7, whenever it was. And I didn't get my thing subsidized at all, so what's up with that?
Who got subsidized?
I don't know. I didn't think anybody got any money to help go there, but, and now we've got a plaza area designated for our our partner city program, sorry. Yeah, I would like to see them continue to do stuff, especially if they're going to stay about looking for another partner city in a different country somewhere else also. But whether that needs to be official under Jared's supervision somehow or another, I don't know if that needs to be the case. But we do have, we still have this ongoing relationship with Czech Republic students who come over here to K-State, and we seem like every year we have a Czech queen who's going to school over here at K-State. So I would like us to continue to pursue Czech things, but I don't know if we actually have to have a committee, official committee, as much as interested people can get together in the city commission room and visit and plan and do stuff. Arts and humanities, I generally like what Wynn had to say about that. I'm curious that, what's the organization that's been getting all the murals? Something MHK. Inside, yeah. I'm slightly curious that a volunteer organization seems to be getting more stuff done than the city organization, and probably based on bureaucracy and
They're told
and
they
they're
can't.
able,
They're told they can't.
yeah, and they can the volunteer organization kind of can solicit donations and do the legwork and come up with things better, faster than the high structured version of what we're offering here. So, yeah, I would really think that. I know Vern is volunteering to take over a lot of stuff over there, and but I would think that would be a good organization to be a subset of a committee for the Greater Manhattan Community Foundation, providing them with guidance on how to maybe use some of the money that's available and taking the project straight there. So, Human Rights and Services Board, that's fine on a quarterly basis. City University, I would say. You guys are concerned that there's not going to be any working together with the university. It's going to be staff people working together versus the committee. So instead of 7 people sitting around hashing out stuff that's already been decided by the powers that be with both the city and the university, just let the powers that be with the city university hash things out. I don't know. I might be convinced that 50-50 is the way to go, but it may be that there's still mutually beneficial projects that we'd like to get together with.
To clarify, the conversations that we've had with the university is, in the event that you would dissolve the City University Fund Projects Committee, when we amend the agreement, we would still want to create that internal process, keep the fund, and do things that are mutually beneficial together, but continue to follow the same or similar internal processes we do now, which is staff meets and identifies projects, the university meets, identifies projects, but also involves their cabinet, SG, their student governing association, faculty senate, and those groups, and then we continue to work together on a recommendation.
That's why I think the committee, City University Committee, is more just a rubber stamp of what's, and I suppose they tweak things or offer a little bit of extra input that may not have been thought about, but yeah, I don't think that they're an essential part of that process really anymore, especially since it's so much less money.
Prior to the North Campus Corridor, we did kind of split the funds. You know, the staff would identify projects, the university would identify projects, but we still were under the understanding that it was a mutually beneficial project. We weren't going 3 miles away and paving a street.
Sure.
That had nothing to do with the university or vice versa.
So, yeah, that's fine. And then, yeah, there's no reason for us to have the staff liaison at the Food and Farm Council.
You didn't mention the bike.
Oh, yeah, there's, I don't think we need to have an official committee for that, since with John Adams kind of having an interest in that with the city, and there's a large group of people that apparently are still interested, that if we needed some input, we could get a committee together in 48 hours, I suspect, to run something by BPAC. So I don't think we really need to keep that officially in place either.
I would just say about the City University, there is no way that the institutional history for that project is gonna last 20 years. Things don't last 4 and 5 years. It's gonna get lost. And so I would rather, we already know we have a $500,000 a year commitment. And so I'm only thinking in terms of what's on top of that, or what will come in. And, you know, it could be, that the whole thing doesn't come in. I don't, is it?
Generally, in totals of the city university fund, if that's what your question
Yeah.
is, pre-pandemic, we were hovering around $700,000, $800,000.
Yeah.
Post-pandemic, we're hovering around 650
Yeah.
or so. So as you all saw on the 2023 budget, we recommended $500,000 for North Campus Corridor and $150,000 for that North Manhattan Avenue crosswalk project. So it's hopefully ticking up, though.
So the staff is doing it and the committee doesn't function at all now anyway? Is that, I mean, if that's the story, then let's just say that.
They do function. We meet and we show the committee the recommendations from the city and staff and the university. And to Mark's point, that group, you know, provides a cursory review. They provide feedback on the projects, and then most of the time it's the same recommendation as the staff and the university staff are presenting. There's been maybe a handful of times, I think a good example was the Colbert Hills Benefit District, where $30,000 was going towards that debt, and every year the committee said they didn't like that project, and each year the commission funded it. Because again, ultimately, the commission has the authority over the funds.
I don't like using it for Colbert Hills.
I'd forgotten about it.
Grandmere paving.
One last thing, so are they getting the, I can't think of the right word, but the internet sales tax too, is that being figured into what city university funds are available?
That tax, to my knowledge, wouldn't be generated on campus unless it was a store on campus where that purchase is occurring. So I think of like it, if I got online and bought a book from the Union bookstore, yeah, that compensating use would go into that fund.
So that's probably only going to go down.
It's mainly sales taxes and franchise fees. Franchise fees has been stagnant and declining at best, and the sales taxes has also been quite in flux because of the pandemic and those things.
Okay.
So right now it's holding steady. I guess you could say the fund. There is an influx of $30,000 to $40,000 from the e-scooter funds.
So there's no room for community input because the staff and the university are already establishing the priorities. So we'll just go with that, and I will just say that we can step away from the city university fund because there's no place for the public there.
So, Joseph, I'll comment on that.
Yeah.
It would still come to you.
That's the bottom line.
For concurrence. Matter of fact, the flow chart starts with you. It isn't just staff projects that are dreamed up. We come to you before we ever get started and say, is there a project that the commission believes is important to suggest to the university? So,
Have we ever had one?
yes, we have.
No.
North Manhattan.
We, the commission.
Yes.
We, the,
You have.
anyway, whatever. 1906. Anyway, I'm going to go down through the list. For the partner city, I kind of agree with dissolving it. I'm sorry, but I'd like for it to continue on in some way because I think it is something that people have a passion about, and it's just lingering and diminishing as time goes by. The Bicycle Advisory Committee, I would like to keep. I think it has a function. And there's no board with more enthusiasm than the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Board. There are also different views about bicycling in this community. And there are three maybe different groups. There are people who use bicycles and the trails for transportation. There's some who use it for 50-mile rides. I mean, they're just so different, and they think differently. And I think that our city may be just listening to one side of that, and I'd like to make sure that it has a broader interest, and that's just what I think. About the arts and humanities, I want our community to celebrate arts and humanities. There are other communities do this well. Salina has a vibrant art and activity, and you don't have to go to a big city to see that public art is important to that community. And I really still like that little tree at, Leavenworth and 3rd Street, I guess, that the owner hasn't picked up yet from the displays, the 10 displays we had 3 years ago. It's kind of just like to keep it. And human rights and services, I think that it should be more on call by the city administration. Or as they have issues that as a group that they want to pursue. If there's no reason to meet just to meet, and so quarterly, or if there's no business, not at all. And that's easy to change in these instructions that we see, because it says they will meet the first Wednesday at 9 o'clock, and it doesn't have to say that. It could say that as topics warrant. So that's the Food and Farm Council. I'm fine with. Like I said, I don't want to just do busy work. I want the Food and Farm Council to recognize and realize that we are a partner here in this community. I don't want to leave it totally to the county, but I think the county knows what the issues are and can bring them to our attention. I don't think we're playing an active part now. And so I think it's just fine to let the county take the lead, and they would get in touch with the city manager's office when there are issues. So that seems reasonable. Is there anything else you want to
Yes,
back up?
I wanted to add a few more comments. I know the way the direction of the city commission is going, but I want us to be cautious about this. We have cut probably 33 citizens that want to be involved. When we say go ahead and do it on your own, do whatever you want, you can organize, you can talk, don't worry about it. It's different when they feel they're part of something bigger, when they feel like they're part of a city government. There's already a distrust with government. And when we want Manhattan to be a welcoming community, we would want more input and them to be part of that process. Whether we think their job is important, quote unquote, or not, they really do. And they feel they're contributing in a manner that is most not only convenient for them, but with something they believe in. And when we say, no, we don't think the same as that, we would like to dissolve that committee because we don't know what you're doing, we haven't given them a chance to make an argument for themselves. And we're saying it comes from the city commission down, but we haven't heard from them. I don't know what these organizations do. We're making assumptions based on what was presented this evening. I looked at what some other cities have. A few cities have a tree advisory board. A few cities have a transient guest tax program advisory board, where that's where they figure out where their art projects come from, or events, or cultural events, or festivals, like somebody else was alluding to. A few have a human relations advisory board. Some have a civic service engagement advisory board. So they are looking at other paths to keep their community members engaged, and it looks like we're going the other way and try to disengage them. And I don't think that's appropriate. I think as a community, and as small as we are, we would like to think we're the biggest thing on the planet, but we're not. We're a very small community. Most people know each other. When you go to the grocery store, most people know who you are. And they want to, I heard, I want to do this, I would like to be a part of that and be appointed to this. And we have that. And our belief in an organization's relevance, we can talk from up here, but they need to have the chance to make that argument as well. So I don't want us to think that this is a one and done because we're going, this is our job as city commissioners to see if they're relevant or not. I I need to hear from them as well. And then there's a lot of other organizations that we haven't talked about that are not on this feedback list. So do they just stay the same? What happens to them? The Douglas Center Advisory Board, what do they do? I mean, does everything stay the same for them? The Discovery Center, there was plenty that we didn't talk about. So where does that fall in all of this discussion? Are they going to be reviewing their meeting times? Or are we saying they're already really important to us, so they're not on that feedback slide?
I wanted to ask Mark about the Audit Committee. You're the only person in my world that has ever served on the Audit Committee, and you only meet once, maybe twice a year. So my question is, how essential is that?
Is that some kind of that's a question for Rena.
Just a question.
The creation of the audit committee was a directive of the city commission of, probably over a decade ago. And so they provide a review of our grants for the year. They also meet with our audit team to discuss the scope of the work and the plan for the year, as well as they also talk to them about areas of focus and review for the particular audit season. They also get updates from me regarding our staffing concerns, as well as any other projects that we have going on in the finance department.
Yeah.
And so we only have 3 members. One member's position, our term ended, expired, so it's 4 members. Commissioner Hadasol is still there, and then the 2 others, and then so we need another committee member.
We need an accountant.
Yes, we have a finance person, we need another accountant
Yeah.
in there. The previous one, her term expired. And then, they were meeting on an as-needed basis, but we have them on a quarterly basis meeting now. I've tried to do that with all the boards and committees that I'm responsible for, is to get them all on a schedule. Just for a brief update, Special Alcohol Fund and SSAB operate pretty much the same in terms of workload, process, and all of that stuff. Before me taking on that responsibility, they were meeting at different times. Their site visits, schedules, as well as their reporting was different, and so they both are in alignment with one another. So that process has already been taken care of.
When does that start, Rena?
In terms of, so for the next cycle year,
Yes.
it starts in September in terms of them starting to meet again, but they meet
Okay.
around 10 or 11 times a year.
Okay.
And
So
that
it's-
includes their public hearings as
Alright.
well as their deliberations.
So if we're going to merge the 2 committees, which it sounds like, and September is the month when you kick off with typically put out the requests to let agencies know to make application.
Excuse me. That's when the board reconvenes.
They
So-
reconvene in
Yes.
September.
So in the fall, not in the fall, but in December, January
Yeah.
timeframe is when we do the application process.
Okay. Well, so my question is, if we're going to merge them, do we need to make the decision that all of the current members will automatically be members of that new constituted committee? And anybody that is appointed would be on there for, is it a 2-year or 3-year term?
They're 3-year terms.
3-year term. So if we can discuss some of those parameters, then I can move ahead and make some appointments now that we have a kind of a certainty ahead.
Thank you.
That makes sense. I mean, way to speed it up. I wanted to address some of Commissioner Reddy's comments. The idea of dissolving the boards is not a message to say those boards aren't valued. I mean, the whole concept of lean management is you change processes to make them better. And I'm 100% convinced that these boards have done good work up to now, but by changing the bureaucratic holds that are on them, they will do better. Arts will get better funding by dealing directly with the Greater Manhattan Community Foundation than they ever will through the city. And I think the bike board will be very effective as a committee, working outside the parameters of the structure, and the same with the partnership city. and it saves up staff time and minutes and all kinds of squirrely things of that nature. So, the message that I think is being sent is a little bit different. It depends on, I guess, the way you're approaching it. And when somebody says, oh, we're dissolved, that means we're not valued, wrong message. And I think, big picture wise, it starts with, we've got to get things restructured so that we can give some guidance in January to all the boards as a group. We need to fix the interest form process. I know that's still in the works right now. And then we need to, relook, how the appointments are done. And then all of the boards can take a look at their bylaws and adjust those. And I agree with comments like, why me? We don't have an agenda, but, we do that with city county. If there's nothing on the agenda, we just cancel the meeting. So if you got a board that's supposed to meet each quarter, if they have nothing on the agenda, cancel it. That's routine and it works. And so I'm all for this, concept and the recommendations. And the last thing is, why weren't the other boards mentioned? Well, they were at the beginning of the presentation. And generally, we're not tinkering with them because it's pretty clear they're required as they are, some of them by statute, and they're just not up for discussion at this point. So they will continue, in my mind, as they have been, unless the board itself wants to, as part of this bylaws adjustment, make some changes there.
Or if, I did mention, or if the commission has questions about those boards and wants to revisit their charge or existence, we can certainly do that. This was the initial review that we put forth as staff. So if the city commission has feedback about those original ones, or as we try and formulate some type of process where we discuss all of our boards, around your city commission retreat annually, we can certainly do that as well.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. No, I was going to say, I think, like I said originally, I know Commissioner Butler said he was the one who prompted all of this. I think it came from all of us to look at advisory boards, so it wasn't a one commissioner-driven initiative. We've been talking about it for several years, especially because we wanted the interest form to look different and the qualifications and term limits and absentees and all of that. But what was presented tonight was different. And so, like I said, I was expecting a similar discussion about all of those boards. For example, there was a question presented to me, why can't the Douglas Center Advisory Board be under the Parks and Rec Advisory Board? I don't know. We're not having that discussion. Maybe they should be separate. I don't know which ones are state statute required and which ones are being recommended, even though there isn't a state statute required, such as the Cemetery Board. I don't know. So those are things that I thought we would have more discussion about and what that might look like, as opposed to shall we keep or shall we dissolve. And when I say those, the Bike, Pedestrian, and Arts Advisory Board, yes, they can do good things in the community, but there's something to be said for being integrated within the city structure. None of them are complaining about bureaucracy, I don't want to be part of the city. They're saying, can you change a few things so we can do better in the city? Because I didn't hear him come up here and say, yes, please dissolve us. We don't want to be associated with the city. It was quite the opposite. Look at what we're doing. Please keep us within the city. That's what I heard from everybody who spoke tonight. Don't dissolve us. We are doing things right. We are providing a service to the community. Please keep us within this structure, is what I heard. So I think that's, there's a lot of organizations that do well outside of the city with private organizations and such, but there's also some pride to be taken with community members that want to be part of the city process. And that's what I heard. I didn't hear anybody say, get rid of our organization, we're not, we will do better without you. It was quite the opposite.
One last thing on the partner city thing. There was a partnership pledge of some kind or something. Someone emailed me about that we signed at the time, and I don't know what that obligates us to. But if you guys could kind of track that down and put it on our in our email thing, so we can kind of review what that says. It may just all be voluntary obligations versus, can't imagine that the lawyers would have let us sign something that obligated us to a lot of something. But just, I'd be curious if you could find that original partner city agreement we have, just to see what we agreed to at the time.
That'd be good. We want to know what we're unraveling.
Just a comment towards the group we didn't talk about, boards, and I think something we have talked about is process and trying to streamline some things, reviewing the boards, the whole issue of, some boards have term limits, some don't, just
The
trying to
details.
create some equilibrium across some of those boards, and then the whole issue of, if a member's term is up and there's not someone to take their place, that hasn't been handled similarly. Some said, yeah, it's okay for you to continue. Others are pretty clear that, no, your term's done. You can't continue. So, again, it's just some of those nuances that would be good to clarify and communicate. And then I am aware that some of those boards are wanting more direction, so, than what their original charge was. And so the commission direction towards them in probably those primary steps and purpose statements for that particular board ought to be where that charge is. But also, as Jared indicated, through our retreat process, there ought to be some annual direction of, here's some things on the horizon in this particular function area. It fits with your board. Can you tackle that and give us feedback in 3 months or 6 months or 9 months or for the budget process or whatever the case may be. So I do think it's going to be important that we have that additional review of some of those. It's just some of these were, I would say, more complex maybe than others.
I won't have to find somebody from Potawatomi County for the bike board. It's been a three-year search. Each mayor tries to find someone.
So on the Municipal Audit Committee, I think the nice thing about that is that the three people that are appointed from the community are people that actually knew something about accounting, auditing, things like that, because the commissioner on there is never going to have 10% of the expertise that the community members have. And if the point was to make sure that the city is following the audit process and everything, or whatever, all steps that includes, the commissioner on there is of very little help.
And Mark, I think you bring up an excellent point. That's true for all of our committees. The Arts Advisory Board has experts in that area. The Bike Board has experts in that area, because we know very little. That's not our expertise.
We depend on those
So
recommendations.
the Arts Advisory Board, they have a diverse group of people, which are artists and
Or photographers, or
and they
something to
have
do
that
with the
interest
arts
and that
or
passion.
humanities.
So all we look at is a budget, and certainly we want the city efficiencies with staff, and there's a way to monitor that. But I don't want us to think it's too hard or it's too challenging. I think we should be more broad-minded and try to be a little bit more innovative in how we utilize those organizations.
Okay, seems like a wrap for this evening. Is there Ron? Oh, my gosh, absolutely. The
official work session is over.
we'll now transition into the city manager's report from the earlier work session. This will be more informal, less structured.
Can you give us a little more light? Somebody turn the lights up just a little bit, please.
Thank you, Commissioners. Just a few things to talk about. I'm going to start with the planning chart. So if you've got those available, at the next week's meeting on the 20th, we've got a couple of second readings. One's on the rezoning to finalize the rezoning of the MCM Industrial Park for Scorpion Biologicals and the Pot County tract, and then also a second reading of franchise agreement with MCI Metro Telecom. I anticipate a few bid awards, booster pump station upgrade that involves several booster stations within our water system, as well as anticipate awarding the bids for the 600 block of Points Avenue. That's the one that the ATA is providing some additional outside funding for. There in front of the library on Points. And then also we rebid a portion of the 1200 block of alley improvements. That was a benefit district project. We still only had one bid, and it was still over the estimate, but there's a portion of the project we want to proceed with because it's the kind of the utilities portion. If we can get that out of the way, then we think that we might be able to add it to some street bids at a later time and be able to have a project. We'll probably have to redo that petition, though. So, and then we did that by public hearing, if you remember. So that's a little more arduous. Within the budget concepts or projects, we anticipate the first reading of the next year's salary ordinance in conjunction with approval of the budget, which is second reading of the budget ordinance, as well as the amended budget, and then also a resolution to adopt the 23 through 27 capital improvements program. Anticipate first reading of an ordinance to implement the new water, wastewater, and stormwater rates. And recall that as part of that process, we had some changes to some of our codes that we wanted to update, system development charges, some of the other fees that we charge that gives the director some ability to adjust some of those fees based on, for example, if you're doing a water meter install, and especially with the price increases we've had, instead of setting a set rate, which might be $850, but it costs us $1,300 because the price of materials has gone up, it's kind of setting a ceiling. So it's either this rate or the actual cost of labor and materials, whichever's more. Those are some of the changes that we had briefed you on that we wanted to incorporate in some of those changes. So again, that's first reading of that ordinance. So if there's some things that you don't want to do, then there'll be an opportunity to do some of those components. We have a resolution. The St. Joseph Village industrial revenue bonds have matured, and they're ready to purchase that option. Keep in mind, when we do IRBs, the city's listed as the owner, as the facilitator of those bonds, and so when they pay them off, we're no longer listed as the owner, and the St. Joseph's would be that particular process. We've got the Juliet and Points Avenue improvements. Remember, we got some damaged signals and some temporary ones there. We want to pre-order the traffic signals for that particular project that will be forthcoming, and that way we have it in time for when the project is ready to bid and be awarded. We have some other purchases with a new mower for the park department. That's a lease purchase program. Also, professional services agreement there for the wastewater treatment plant, solids treatment upgrade and expansion that you've concurred with the selection process, so we'll have the agreement with that team of consultants for that particular project. There's a outside the city water and sewer request by Warden Brenda Morgan for the Morgan Ranch area. That's an area that's south of Annenberg Park and north of Miller Parkway, and it's the old Harms and Kaufman tracks. So they're wanting to do some construction in the county. They're wanting city services, and it also would entail a development agreement with them to build that city infrastructure to city standards, to extend that service to them. We anticipate the final plat for the MCM Industrial Park, which is the Scorpion project also, and anticipate there could be some licensing. Also anticipating public hearing for Abbott's Landing planned unit development. You might recall that Abbott's Landing is that area along McCall Road that's basically on the north side of McCall, east of Hayes Drive, so it kind of starts with Burger King there and goes along the frontage road all the way to the Panda. Doesn't include the Panda, but it includes the Orchlands and all that frontage. So there's a vacant lot there, and they're proposing to build a new drive-up facility there for shaved ice and other things. I'm trying to think of the name of the company. Tropical Smoothies. There you go. That was at the planning board last Thursday, which met on a Thursday instead of Monday because of the holiday. and that was unanimously approved and recommended. So that's the last remaining vacant lot on that particular planned unit development. Then on October 4th.
You want to mention the Downtown Tomorrow plan? It authorized steering committee, application process for steering committee members for downtown.
Yep, I saw,
plan.
missed that.
Did you say that?
I did not.
No, I
So
didn't think
yes,
so.
we're
Yeah, okay,
planning to have before you some recommendations for how we might develop that steering committee
okay,
for the development of the Downtown Tomorrow plan process.
okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
No, I just
Yep.
hadn't heard.
I kind of mixed up going in order, and then I don't remember what I
That's okay.
said or didn't say. So October 4th, anticipate several second readings there on things I just covered. And then we have an agreement, a development agreement with Tropical Smoothies. If you approve that, they need to build some infrastructure there, and we would contract with them and do a separate development agreement where their contractor would build a sanitary sewer extension to our specifications. We also anticipate a request by our annual agreement with Whoville for the Festival of Lights. They're also wanting to do some improvements in the park that my understanding is they're going to ask us to participate in some of those improvements financially, but it primarily involves anchors for the tree so it doesn't fall down. So that's the big part of that. But it would be a type of permanent improvement, anchor, in the park. So we also, as you know, we had a RFP for stream management and have made recommendations, and the commission concurred with that selection, and we anticipate the agreement coming back for that consultant group. We also have some purchases, anticipating a self-propelled turf sprayer for parks, and then some alert equipment system for our fire departments. All the things that have been in the capital improvements program, and then we are also anticipating first reading to adopt the new international codes. So there's about 9 of them, and again, remember the international codes are a year behind because they've been vetting them since they were proposed in 21. So this is the 2021 version, and then the 2020 version of the National Electric Code, and those have been vetted with community stakeholders and support for that process. So those are the next 2 upcoming legislative agendas that we
Just a
are
question.
aware of.
Is the Housing Authority still on schedule for the 4th to?
So more to come on that one. It's possible that it could be on that. I know we're meeting with some of their representatives tomorrow on some of the potential agreements, and so we'll just kind of see where we're at.
For what? For the 4th of October?
That was
Is that
what
what
they
you're
had
talking?
originally requested. Yeah.
Okay.
Ron, so I know for next year, out of the general fund, $1.5 million, $1.8 million, whatever, of capital improvement projects were not budgeted but planned for. Are some of these purchases here things that you'd planned on and you were gonna pay for them when we had money and now we got a little money and you're doing them, or is that not?
Some of these were budgeted for, and we anticipated there was money, and we identified funds for them on most of these.
Okay, so it's not
So
necessarily.
it's not necessarily that scenario.
Okay.
So then, and that would be, right now, things have been positive, and we're kind of going to see where we are at the end of the year. And I know we kind of said we'd wait till the end of the year, and we may do that, but we may say, hey, there's enough there. We may peel off some priority things and start on them. So that's kind of what we anticipate for that process.
Okay, so pull off priority things from next year's CIP to start to try to do this year, or more things that were scheduled for this year we're gonna actually do?
Yeah, I think most of the projects and vehicles that we had anticipated to purchase this year are funded.
Okay, all right.
And so we wouldn't do anything sooner.
Okay.
Next year's projects will have to wait till next year, and purchases, vehicle purchases. On the backside, work sessions, we have the next work session on the 27th is the housing market analysis strategy. The steering committee has met and reviewed the current draft. That also was covered at the planning board meeting. So there is a draft of that document that was part of that packet. And Stephanie, is that posted on the website, or is it just available through their packet link?
Right now, it's just through the packet link. We're still waiting on a couple of additional pages of that document, so it is still very much in draft form.
But if you're interested, that meeting is archived, and so you can go watch that presentation and the discussion that the planning board had on that and that the team presented. So that would be there. My understanding, based on my observation of that presentation, was that this is considered to be kind of a live draft, and there will be a new version that's coming to you for your work session. So taking the input from the steering committee and the planning board and upgrading that draft when it comes to you for consideration.
Well, then what does it mean that there's a notice in tonight's paper saying that there's a public hearing on it for October 3rd?
When it's the final draft, you'll have to have a public hearing as part of the ordinance to revise the comprehensive plan to incorporate that document. So I'm guessing that, so on October 3rd, the planning board will hear the final draft, and then it'll be brought before you after that. But because the planning board will have a public hearing because it's amending the comprehensive plan, and then the city commission would also have a public hearing at the final reading because it's an ordinance. They'll end up adopting that document.
That's assuming you all on the 27th indicate that that's where you're pleased with it and are ready for a public hearing. So
Well, I'd like to get it, 27th, I'd like to have it so that we have the opportunity to read it and go through it and not just have our usual 3 or 4 days, you know what I mean?
and that was why I brought it up, because
Yeah.
the draft
So if
is
we
there in the
go-
planning document.
If we go to the planning board's agenda.
We can put that on their reading folder
Okay.
hub
That'd
for
be
you.
good.
We'll pull that out.
Yeah.
We'll pull the draft that they've reviewed, and that, so you can get advanced. I wouldn't think there'd be tons of changes to it for second
I think
draft.
there are going to be. Right now, there's probably 10 different pages that are just pink boxes. We're waiting to fulfill those. I think where we got in the bind of the October 3rd, the planning board actually taking this as an action item and you only seeing it on the 27th of this month. Tonight was actually supposed to be the night that we talked about the housing market analysis, and we had to postpone that for the steering committee to have enough time to review it. I think we could also look at postponing when the planning board hears this. There's really not a rush to get it through. I'm a little bit hesitant on giving you the draft we have right now, just knowing that there are going to be changes that are made. Staff's made some substantial changes or suggestions to that document. So it will change if we send you the one that planning board just saw. So I think there's a couple options. Ron, I'll look back at you of what you would advise.
Yeah, we can talk about it at staff tomorrow.
Okay.
We'll let you know. Okay?
Okay.
But in the meantime, if you wanted to watch that meeting, there's some good information and some good discussion about
Don't
at
read.
least what's being
Yeah.
contemplated and some of the pros and cons that are being weighed about. So would encourage you to do that. On the 11th of October, we've got the third CVB report coming to you, as well as RCPD is going to start back up with their quarterly updates.
Good.
And Interim Director Moldrup will do that. Commissioner Reddy and I will be at the AUSA meeting, so we won't be at that particular work session. Right now, we're targeting the 25th of October for the 12th Street design in Aggieville. Not going to happen?
Highly doubt it.
All these are fluid, so.
Okay, just cross that one.
There are other, and if that doesn't happen, maybe we
Other
bring
topics.
back some other updates on boards. So, I mean, those are some things we can do too.
I would like that.
And we have some openings there, obviously, that we have, and that was part of the strategy, if we have some updates on some of the other boards, or if we talk about some of the other bylaws and processes and some of those other things, we could certainly.
He's talking about on October 25th.
Will all the boards be able to look at their stuff?
No, but some of them might. I mean, I know that some of them have been looking at bylaws, and so those are some things we can't handle them all at once anyway, so.
Planning board did theirs. I know they're
Right.
finished,
But
so
I would-
some boards have and some haven't.
I would like a work session when we have their chairs or their boards present, because bylaws only tell us a little bit of the story.
Right.
So I think that would be good to have one of those work sessions at some point where we invite the chairs and their boards to present to us,
Sure.
strengths, challenges, modifications, efficiencies, what can we do better, do we need to just forget about?
All right. A few other things. I know we sent this dashboard to you on kind of a financial picture, and Rena and Jason kind of collaborated to do that. And so if you find that helpful, or if you have feedback.
Actually,
on those.
I do have some feedback, but once I get back, I'll get with Jason.
Okay.
It's just really small. If you could make the borders narrow and the print a little bit bigger, that'd be good.
Printed on 11 by 17.
I don't know. Doesn't matter to me, but it's just too small.
The league meeting is coming up in October as well, and the mayor and Jared are attending on behalf of the city. I'm not aware of any other city staff or commissioners that are attending. One of the things that they need us to report are voting delegates. So what we've done in the past, there's a little update on the league news that came out today, actually, and it's been there, but so there's a state statute that the league is now collecting registrations for voting delegates and alternates. There is a KSU statute that provides that the governing body of each member city may elect a city delegate from among the city's officers to represent the city and conduct the management affairs of the League of Kansas Municipalities. And traditionally, the league will have several items, maybe changes to their bylaws, might be some nominations, and you're just empowering. We typically have talked about it like this, and just say, whoever's attending on behalf of the city, we list as a delegate and an alternate if we have enough. Right now, we have 5 slots, but we probably will only have 2 or 3 going. So we'll only have 2 or 3 of those votes, and they're usually not earth-shattering. One of the things they do is vote on their legislative process and adopt their legislative platform.
And their budget, that they have an actual business meeting,
Right.
and then they have another session for legislative priorities for the coming year, and so
So
it's our
When is that?
only opportunity to vote within the organization.
When is that? Again, I keep forgetting.
October 7th to the 12th.
that's when we're in AUSA.
AU, that's
Oh,
why I
you're
couldn't
gone.
go.
Yeah,
Okay.
uh-huh.
So, any objection to the mayor and Jared representing us? All right, thank you. We've also been looking at, we haven't done the community survey since 2019. And so we didn't do it last year. It's something that we'd like to do again, and wanted to see, we did it in November then, I think.
The first year in 2015, we did it in the fall. In 2017 and 19, we did it in the spring. We thought it'd be best to get it back in the late fall again, so we were thinking mid-November we would be able to get that community survey out, keep it open for a month. That garnered pretty good response rate back in 2015. Also think it's a good opportunity to ask some new questions, some pointed questions, some related to recreation is a good topic that we could get some more feedback. So we think the timing's right to relook at that survey and get one out this fall. Preferably we'll get it out after the election so it doesn't get lost in the mail.
And we were looking at engaging the folks we worked with before, because they've got that experience, and then certainly we would bring that and cover it with you before we send it out. So there'd be that provision. So,
Survey?
Yes.
Yeah. When you say the people, which ones are we talking about? Who did it last time?
So we worked with Dr. Schaefer, Josie Schaefer, when she was with K-State the first time and the second time, and then in 2019 she had became the director of research at UNO, University of Nebraska in Omaha. They also, when she was at, or since she's been at UNO, has helped out the Flint Hills Wellness Coalition with their community needs assessment in 2020. So they're
What's the cost on that?
it's around $10,000. And that's related to all the analysis they do, but they'll also be doing the printing because we're also going to do our email methods, but we're also going to use postcards to get people who don't have emails associated with their utility billing accounts, so we can reach more people.
So, more to come. Let us know if you have thoughts about that. And some upcoming meetings, we've got Joint City County this Thursday here at 4 o'clock, and the Riverfront MHK. The committees met and reviewed the RFP that the Riverfront MHK group is looking at utilizing after they do their fundraising. So they're looking for kind of permission and the endorsement from both the city and Riley County that they could proceed with that. The thought process that was discussed was maybe having some type of resolution of support that encourages them to raise these funds, and that would ultimately develop a master plan that could be put in front of the governing bodies to determine whether obviously the governing bodies would be involved in that purpose, and they would also, the resolution would pledge that, staff would cooperate, the city and the county would cooperate and participate in that process. So that's what's coming back to you on this week, and then also if you concur with that resolution of support, which would be scheduled for future meetings. We have an intergovernmental luncheon on Monday, the 26th at the Bluemont, and that is the current program is K-State President Richard Litton plans to come and address the intergovernmental group. So that's
And I won't be there, but Mark just said that he would lead the meeting.
all right. Thank you. And I think I have covered everything other than the National League of Cities. Their annual city summit is in Kansas City, November 17th through the 19th. And there's a special rate for both Kansas and Missouri officials. So if that's something that you're interested in, I know the mayor's indicated that she's planning to attend that. That's all I have.
I'm leaving tomorrow and won't be back till October 3rd.
Okay.
So need Zoom links for that.
Okay, very good.
And the only thing I have, I guess I'm still waiting for that, definitive report on what we're gonna do for 2023 budget
Yep.
as to,
On memberships, yep,
and we'll get that, I guess, by
Yep.
next meeting.
with their packet, yep.
Thank you.
So I wanted to know where we are with the Bridget Everett deal.
So we have negotiated an agreement with the firm and engaging them to start that review
For the logos?
for logos
Copyright?
and Johnny Call on copyright.
Okay, so we're in discussion.
Yes.
I just saw that Travel Writer, the article that we saw today, has a picture of Johnny Caw in it.
Right.
Do you know?
Well, I mean, it's just a
I
picture.
don't know what the right question is.
Picture that they're not, you're right. I mean, HBO is utilizing it and then rebroadcasting it for their use.
Selling stuff. Okay.
Okay. And so for the strategic plan, there was a component in there where it says we keep track of it on our dashboard somewhere. So do we keep track of some of these bullet points that come with our agendas, how we are on any of those?
I think we were gonna get an update like mid-year or something. And then, of course, she'll be reporting in January with the new retreat.
Yeah, one thing we're working on that we'll hopefully have in place by the retreat after about a year of the strategic plan is that community dashboard, but also an internal one where we're trying to revamp that along with our monthly report so that our monthly report ties directly to the strategic plan in that visual way that we can track each goal, the action items, the progress that's made. It's something that we started working on.
Yeah, and and it's good not to just say, check, we did it, but what we did, whether it's good or bad, or whatever, how it's thought, the outcome from that would be good to have a small summary,
Yep.
because it can't just be we checked off a box.
Yeah.
That doesn't give any information.
We don't necessarily want it to be a scorecard or something like that where there's a check there. We
Right.
want to provide some qualitative analysis with each action item. We're also trying to use that monthly report and the metrics that are in there and tie those metrics to those goal areas so that it's not just a number in a long monthly report, but
Right.
we can track those visually too. Yep.
And update it, like, we discussed advisory boards, but I don't want to say we discussed it 5 times. That doesn't really say anything about an outcome there, just because we discussed it. What came from it, it would be important for us to know, and for future commissioners. I would still like to have a meeting about ARPA funds, the 2.6 million. I know we keep talking about it. I've heard multiple discussions about how we can use it. So if we can have a work session at some point about a broader discussion, because we've had so many ways that fall beyond the 2.6 on how we want to use it. So I think I would like to have discuss that at a future meeting. I missed the MPO meeting. I couldn't, was it the?
Yes.
And
And I sat in for you.
me.
Yeah.
So-
And I did vote a couple of times, but I would not say that they were consequential votes.
Right, right. And Jared Tremblay is the new MPO director, program director, I believe. And I think that's about it as far as my updates. Yeah. Thank you.
Flint Hills Regional Council is, there was a meeting last night that I couldn't attend, first one in a long time. And then the full board will meet this coming Friday, so they have a busy agenda. What other, am I on anything else?
It's hard when we're at the end of the meeting.
It's winding down here. But I did attend the MPO for Yusha, and the notes are at home, but as I recall, it wasn't earth-shaking or anything.
Ron, did you want to talk about the Housing Authority meeting tomorrow at the library or anything? I don't know if that matters.
It's not our meeting.
Okay.
Staff's not planning to be there, so.
One thing, they're just doing it for as much community outreach as possible, because that is one of the things. All the meetings they're doing now are their meetings. The Housing Authority, just to update people, I mean, once we get deep into this process, then there'll be city reviews and meetings and things of that nature. But this is just them wanting to get as many people information as possible.
It's my understanding there isn't a process with the city.
So right now, we have a concept proposal that's been shared with you, and you all gave us concurrence to move forward with learning more about it. So
Yeah.
we're learning more about it.
Yeah, but it's not a train on a track. It's just, I wanted you to go forward with it to explore it. I don't have a pre-decision at all, because I don't know enough about it. We only know the same information we had from the beginning, and we don't know anything really else since then.
Is that gonna, that will probably entail a rezoning and a quasi judicial thing, so we probably shouldn't have an opinion yet, or is that not really gonna fall?
It probably isn't going to be quasi judicial. I guess it somewhat would be, it could be kind of like Aggieville with projects we've had there. It could be kind of like the Art and Light Museum. I mean, we own a parking lot, that we're the owner of the property. We originally talked about a concept of a memorandum of agreement or understanding. It could be easily couched as a pre-development agreement. that if something happens, then we might do something. We're learning that they're proposing potentially an option agreement, so for the space, which implies that they might want to own it. So, you know, there's lots of issues to talk about, and so that's also hinged on, I'm assuming that it's hinged on a FEMA grant being awarded for the buyout because they want to reinvest that money. Well, we've applied for the grant. We haven't applied for the grant because we've just finished the agreement that says the National Church of Residence is going to do the match. So we're months away from FEMA, you know, so there's a lot of things that, and I don't know whether they want to move forward with a process when we don't have a guaranteed source of funding for that buyout. So there's just a lot of issues that have to be resolved.
Do we have to have, at what point do we have to have a floodplain administrator hired?
We have
We're
an acting floodplain
We have
administrator.
an acting one?
Yes, Bill Heatherman is the floodplain administrator right now. He's with Public Works.
Uh-huh,
So he's serving in that capacity and doing all floodplain review.
okay. And so do you get him certified then so that we keep our designation with FEMA? I know it's important.
Yes, there's actually probably going to be 2 different people that are certified, which even get us more points through
Yeah.
that recertification process.
That'd be great, yeah. Okay, I just don't, you know, we had a safety person, and sometimes I think we still have people, and they're gone. They disappeared without us knowing about them, so what happened?
Some people are wearing multiple hats.
Yeah, I'd say so. Okay, with that, if we're finished, is there a motion to adjourn?
Mayor, I move that we adjourn the September 13th,
13th.
2022 Manhattan City Commission meeting.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Jared, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Reddy,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Motta,
Yes.
Mayor Morse,
Yes,
Commissioner Haddishall.
Yes.
Motion passes.
okay. Okay, at this point, it's 8:36. We are adjourned. Thank you all for